If you drive down Gairloch Road in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia, at night, the first thing that strikes you is the dark. It is a landscape dominated by an almost impenetrable marshy forest that presses hard against the asphalt on either side. To the public, this is where 6-year-old Lilly and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan simply evaporated on the morning of May the 2nd, 2025. The internet true crime community has picked this timeline down to the bone. They have debated the sliding glass door, the early morning hours. They've spent months shouting into the digital void, demanding to know why the local police are not telling them more. But while the public stares at the trees, they're missing the forest. Because months ago, the operational heart of this case was quietly cut out of Nova Scotia and flown 1,300 kilometers away into a secure, windowless facility on Vanier Parkway in Ottawa. This is the National Centre for Missing Persons and Unidentified Remains. When a major crime unit officially handles a file, they do not send it just out to a standard patrol car. In the Sullivan case, the RCMP quietly cross-referenced 11 separate specialized divisions. This isn't an administrative gesture. This is a scorched earth bureaucratic mobilization. True crime forums believed they hit a dead end when the RCMP formally announced that those closest to the children took and passed polygraph. The internet closed the book assuming a pass means total innocence. But if you've spent any time in the true crime world, you already know the truth about that. Polygraphs are not magic truth machines. They're stress monitors. Green River killer Gary Ridgway famously passed a polygraph while actively hiding victims. Serial killer Charles Cullen did the exact thing. The margin for error is so massive, the Supreme Court of Canada declared polygraph results completely inadmissible as criminal trial evidence decades ago. So why is the RCMP Truth Verification section still using them? This is where things get real interesting. They aren't using them to prove who is lying. They are structured as a psychological trap. While the RCMP does not publicly specify every single piece of gear they deploy, Canadian law enforcement agencies heavily rely on the Lafayette Instrument computerized polygraph systems, specifically models like LX6000. These systems track 5 channels of raw physical data: respiration, cardiovascular changes, micro muscle movements, and skin conductance. When a standard test is scored, the software reduces all that physical data into a single net mathematical average across an entire hour. If a suspect stays relatively calm through direct accusatory questions, their net average logs as a total, quote, pass. No deception indicated. But passing the overall test does not mean the chart was flat. And this is what we need to pay attention to. During a targeted protocol called Concealed Information Test, the human examiner structures the script to completely alter how the polygraph works. It is built directly into the interview format, turning the hardware into a memory recognition tracker. Psychologists know that the human brain possesses an involuntary subconscious reflex called an orienting response. A suspect can sit in that chair and pass the broad questions cleanly. But then the examiner stops asking if they're guilty. Instead, they read off a couple of choice lists of completely random, multiple, mundane materials or landmarks, and quietly drop in one highly classified, unreleased detail that only the perpetrator could possibly know. The suspect, their face doesn't twitch, but their brain instantly recognizes the clue. And the Lafayette sensors capture a sudden, massive, isolated explosion in skin conductance. A physical spike of pure panic lasting a single second. Because this recognition trap is averaged into the entire hour-long file, the net final printout still reads as an official pass. The RCMP can step up to a microphone and tell the public that the family members passed, because they cannot reveal to the world that they just mapped out the exact terrifying architecture of a suspect's secret. And if you want proof that the RCMP is hunting for those exact hidden spikes, you have to look at what happened in this case. According to unsealed court documents, investigators didn't stop at one test. In a highly abnormal move, Major Crimes initiated a second round of polygraphs. They went right back into the interview room, dragging the children's parents, Daniel Martel and Malaya Brooks Murray, under the lens. But they didn't stop there. They targeted the outer circle. They administered examinations to the children's aunt, Haley Ferdinand, and a man named Hayden Murray Smith. They asked them with the exact same 4 repetitive questions, focusing heavily on the timeline and the discovery of the trace evidence. They all officially passed, but the RCMP didn't pack up the machines. They packed up the data because they weren't looking for lies. They were looking for the connection. The raw data is fed into a highly classified federal platform known as the National Missing Children, Persons, and Unidentified Remain Database. The second Lilly and Jack's vitals, behavioral quirks, and geographic coordinates were logged. An intelligence analyst fed their lives into the significance matrix. The matrix does not think like a human detective. A human detective looks for immediate motive, local suspects, and emotional proximity. The matrix bypasses human bias entirely. It looks for signatures. It tracks decades of unsolved abductions across North America, cross-referencing temporal anomalies, environmental variables, and counter-forensic behaviors. It asks a chilling mathematical question. Has the specific hand operated in these woods before?
This is the National Center for Missing Persons and Unidentified Remains, established to improve investigations of missing persons across Canada. The RCMP program has a number of services that fit together to assist with missing person and unidentified remains investigations. The National Missing Persons DNA Program is a partnership with the National DNA Data Bank. DNA profiles from human remains, missing persons, relatives of missing persons, convicted offenders, crime scenes, and victims are compared to help identify remains or provide investigative leads. The data bank provides all the science, while RCMP coaches the investigator on the submission process, authorizes submissions, and manages the life cycle of profiles. The National Center has special expertise in handling international child abduction and missing persons cases. We monitor a toll-free phone number for law enforcement 24/7 to provide immediate assistance in abduction cases. NCMPR is part of our Missing Children, one of 4 federal government departments working together to locate and return children. We also coordinate the National Amber Alert Working Group and represent Canada on several international working groups and forums. The regional centers provide similar liaison and advisory services on a provincial level, such as help with the use of provincial missing persons acts. Our system runs an automated analysis on any new case or when information changes, trying to match missing persons to unidentified remains or identify patterns of interest. An investigator can request a manual analysis using sophisticated searches and comparison tools. We can provide other types of analysis as well, such as intelligence analysis if that's not available at your agency. We built a national database that has collected every missing and body entry on CPIC since 2014. The quality of a CPIC entry dictates the quality of the analysis and other services the NCMPR program will be able to provide, which is why we work with agencies to optimize their entries. The database can produce national statistics and research for a more accurate and a long-term understanding of missing persons cases in Canada, as reported through CPIC.
To understand the quiet, terrifying power of this matrix, you have to look at the landmark case of Christine Jessup in Ontario. In 1984, the 9-year-old girl vanished. For over 3 decades, the investigation was a catastrophic, high-profile failure. Human detectives targeted the wrong men, poisoned the local evidence pool, and left a community living in fear. Traditional police work failed because it looked at the immediate circle with emotional eyes. But when federal analysts stripped away the local noise and applied the macro-behavioral mapping, they isolated data anomalies that a standard detective would have brushed past. Decades later, when modern investigative genetic genealogy was paired with the matrix's geographical indexing, it allowed forensic teams to entirely bypass the contaminated local suspect list. It targeted a single genetic lineage, exposing a man named Calvin Hoover decades after the crime occurred, even though he was already in the grave. That is how the modern federal system thinks. It doesn't look for answers in the local news. It waits for the data to bleed. But there is a modern high intelligence weapon in the RCMP's arsenal that goes far deeper than tracking a cell phone on the morning of May 2nd, 2025. It is a technique adopted from military intelligence and counterterrorism units. Pattern of life analysis. True crime forums are obsessed with looking for an alibi for a single window of time. They ask, where was he at 6 a.m.? Who was driving down Gerlach Road at 3 a.m.? But elite investigators from the Criminal Analysis Service and the Behavioral Sciences Group know that alibis can be fabricated, timelines can be manipulated. Instead, they look at the people surrounding Lilly and Jack Sullivan and ask a much larger question. How does their shadow look when no one is watching? Pattern of life analysis is a study of human automation. Every single one of us lives within a rigid, subconscious behavioral rhythm. We connect to the exact same cell towers at the exact same times. We buy coffee at the same drive-thrus, browse specific corners of the internet at midnight. We route our cars down specific rural roads out of pure unthinking muscle memory. This data forms a digital and physical mosaic. It is entirely involuntary, completely compulsive, and virtually impossible to falsify. When the RCMP seized digital metadata, vehicle logs, financial records, they didn't just look at the week the children went missing. They went backwards. 6 months, 12 months, 3 years. They used automated AI tracking to map out the baseline rhythm of the adults in that house and those who were close to the children. They mapped out exactly when the phones went silent, how often gas was purchased, what routes were taken to work, and who they interacted with. And once that baseline matrix is built, they look for the anomaly. To understand how the pattern of life analysis breaks a case wide open, you have to strip away the local Nova Scotia rumors and look at the brutal reality of historical Canadian files. Consider the landmark investigation into the 2014 disappearance of Nathan O'Brien and his grandparents Alvin and Catherine Lickness in Calgary. On paper, the suspect, Douglas Garland, had no obvious immediate physical ties to the exact window of their disappearance from the home. He hadn't left a definitive trail of fingerprints or eyewitnesses at the scene. But the Calgary Police Service and integrated major crime units didn't just look at the timeline of that night. They executed a massive pattern of life audit on Garland. They analyzed his historical footprint of his family's rural property in Airdrie. They tracked his habitual internet searches, his precise financial transactions, and his vehicle's routine movements. And they found the fracture. On the exact night the family vanished, Garland's involuntary pattern of life shattered. An automated aerial survey asset captured a visual anomaly on his property, a physical trace that completely deviated from the historical, everyday baseline of how that farm operated. When investigators layered his digital search patterns over the physical changes on the ground, the mosaic was complete. Garland hadn't just committed a crime. He had altered his daily rhythm, and the data exposed him before a body was ever recovered. And this is what those 11 divisions are doing behind the wall of silence in the Sullivan file. They are looking at the weeks before May 2nd, 2025. Did an adult around those children suddenly change their financial habits? Did a vehicle register on a distant traffic counter or trail cam on a route it had never taken in 3 years? Did text messaging volume between specific individuals spike or drop off in a way that violated their historical behavioral baseline? A suspect can rehearse a statement. They can compose themselves for a polygraph. They can clean a vehicle or delete an inbox. They cannot rewrite 3 years of automated living. They cannot tell their cellular device to unping a historical tower. The police are looking at the digital ledger of physical routes, of banking records, of cell phone pings, and the routes of everyone else. If someone shifted their behavior even by a fraction of a degree in the lead up to the disappearance of Lilly and Jack, the pattern of life analysis will extract it like a tumor. And that brings us to the final, far more unsettling half of the NCMPR's mandate: unidentified remains. Court documents confirm that investigators recovered 2 separate pieces of Lilly's pink blanket. One piece was found caught in a tree nearly a kilometer away from the home. The other piece was recovered from a trash bin. These pieces were quietly packaged in sterile biological seals and shipped directly to the National Forensic Laboratory in Ottawa. Because NCMPR doesn't look at a blanket to see a piece of cloth. They look for touch DNA. When a human hand grips a surface with force, it doesn't just leave a fingerprint. The friction sloughs off microscopic dead skin cells. That gets trapped into the synthetic woven fibers of the fabric. Traditional labs would look for large fluid stains. The federal lab uses vacuum immunoextraction technology. They literally micro-vacuum the fabric, pulling the microscopic dust of human skin out of the fibers. Think of the historic resolution of the Susan Tice and Aaron Gilmore homicides in Toronto. For 36 years, those 2 brutal files sat completely frozen. The connection between them was entirely invisible to the naked eye. No witnesses, no overlapping social circles. But when advanced DNA degradation recovery was applied decades later, scientists pulled an identical ultra-microscopic genetic profile from completely separate, degraded pieces of fabric left at both scenes. Once that profile was uploaded into the federal databank, the matrix systematically cross-referenced family databases across the continent. It bypassed 36 years of dead ends, ultimately locking down a 61-year-old suspect living completely unbothered in a different province. When we look at historical files like Christina Jessup or Susan Tice, we're looking at mysteries that took 30, 40, 50 years to solve. The public looks at Lilly and Jack Sullivan's case today and assumes it is doomed to follow the same agonizing generational timeline. But they're forgetting one critical factor. The velocity of human technology is no longer linear. It is exponential. Take geofencing. A decade ago, the concept of building an invisible virtual perimeter around a crime scene to extract every cellular ID that crossed it was an experimental, legally fraught military concept. Today, it is an automated, routine, major crime protocol utilized within hours of an emergency broadcast. In the historic cold cases of the 1980s, investigators had to wait decades for science to catch up to the crime scenes. But today, the infrastructure is already built. Genetic databases are doubling in size every few months. Artificial intelligence models are parsing millions of video frames in seconds. Tasks that used to take human teams years to review. What this means is simple, and it should terrify anyone with a secret. The era of the permanent cold case is officially dead. The timeline is shrinking. A case opened today will not take 30 years to bleed into an answer. The systems tracking Lilly and Jack Sullivan, the 11 divisions, the significance matrix, the pattern of life anomalies, are moving with a speed that historical detectives could only dream of. The Nova Scotia RCMP is not operating in a standstill. They are operating in a quiet space just before the technology catches up, locks the coordinates, and refuses to let go. You have been watching The Invisible Investigation, a docu-series of 10 episodes, this being episode 7. If you are enjoying this type of content, please hit the subscribe button. Share the video. If you want to look past the surface noise and keep discovering the real science, the old case files, and the invisible machinery behind Canada's most complex investigations, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the rapid acceleration of surveillance technology will completely eliminate unsolved mysteries in our lifetime? Let's talk about it. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next episode, where we endeavor to clear what is hidden in the fog.